because of some things I saw on YouTube, I was reminded again of the tragic killing of Rob Reiner and his wife. And when I was growing up as a kid, All in the Family, that was actually kind of a favorite program of mine. Favorite program, most of my family, except for my dad, didn't like it very much. But I think my mom liked it, and I liked it, and my brother liked it. Now, the thing about his character, Mike Stivic, really did help to make that show what it was. His character was a likable character. He was also he represented how the way that the conflict between generations had become politicized. Prior to that, there'd always been a certain amount of generational conflict. But in the 60s and 70s, it became politicized, which I'm not sure that prior to that it really had necessarily been politicized. You had in the 50s, the famous James Dean film was called Rebel Without a Cause, because it was about a rebellious teenagers and they didn't have a cause. Okay, but Mike Stivic was, liberal as opposed to Archie Bunker's traditional conservatism. Now, one of the interesting things about it, though, was that Mike Stivic didn't always win the debates, partly because, the show seemed to be on his side most of the time. But there was also the feeling that Mike Stivic seemed to be liberal to just be liberal. He was also sometimes conservative when it came to gender issues. He was a bit of a male chauvinist. And in that sense, he and Archie sometimes could side against Gloria, and, I don't really know where Edith was in there. There was also a tendency for his character, because of his liberalism, to concentrate, and because of the time period, to kind of over-concentrate on politics. One time Lionel called him on it, and they made a thing about it. Lionel said that he tended to treat him as a representative of the black race and not as an individual. That he seemed to always want to talk about black problems. And, Mike asked, what do you want me to talk about, the weather? And Lionel pointed out, well, why not? Black people have weather too. Good point. And it was funny. But anyway, that was how we all got to know Rob Reiner, was through the character of Mike Stivic, who was always called Meathead by the more conservative Archie Bunker. And while the writers of the show were, you could kind of tell they were liberals, but they did give a little every now and then to Archie. And they also had a kind of understanding of Archie. That he wasn't really a bad man. That he was somebody who was had been kind of enculturated into his bigotry. And he couldn't really give up his bigotry without kind of turning against the parents, his own parents, who had taught it to him. Okay, and anyway, those are some of the thoughts I had about Mike Stivic and about All in the Family. And I do think that it was a very interesting show because it was one of the first shows that had characters who you could identify